Okay, so we're going to talk first about stem and leaf plots. I know some of you did learn about this in science. We're actually going to be doing what we call a back-to-back stem and leaf plot, so it's a little different, okay? This is just another way to represent your data so you can see it visually. No matter what, though, what's the first thing you always do? Order them. So that's the first thing. We're comparing two sets of test scores. So we're going to order Kelsey's scores and Tammy's scores. So what's Kelsey's lowest score?
68.
68. Okay, and then she has a 76. Okay, and then 86. 89. 91. 93. And then 97, and finally 100. Okay? Should have 8 scores. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to order Tammy's. What's her lowest? 75. 78. 83. Yeah, 83 first. All right, so what would your mode be?
85.
Very good. Wait, did I write 78? Yeah, I did. Okay, 93. Okay, so that should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 scores. Okay, so to create a stem and leaf plot, this is just like a graph, or not really a graph, but more of a chart to represent your data so that you can visually compare it. Okay, it's literally what it sounds like. You have a stem, just like you would for a tree or a flower, and the sides of that stem will have leaves on it, and this is where we put numbers. So, our stem, and I'm going to block this off so my numbers don't run into each other. Our stem is going to represent the number that is in our tens place. So what's my smallest number here?
68.
And my highest is 100. So I'm going to be writing down whatever's in my tens place. I can't skip. So once I start with that 6, I have to do every number between 6 and 10. Why did I put a 10 here for my tens place? Because 10 tens is what? 100. My leaves only represent the ones place. So everything on your stem will be everything that's not in your ones place. Yeah.
What if your tree's not long enough?
Just draw a little bit longer. Or just squeeze it in. Now, we're going to be comparing two different ones. So we have Kelsey and Tammy. Okay? Now remember, these are our leaves, and our leaves to the side are all single digits. They're only what is in our ones place. So what score did Kelsey have that was in the 60s? 68. So we're going to put an 8. And what this represents is 68. Your stem is your tens place, or hundreds, or whatever place it is, and your leaves are only your ones place. So what if I had 200? What would my stem be? Not 0. Not 2. 20. Because it's everything that's not in your ones place. If you had 257, what would your stem be? 25. It's whatever is not in your ones place. Okay? Alright, does Tammy have any 60s? No. Do I put a 0 here? No, because that would actually represent 60. So we want to make sure and leave it blank. What about our 70s for Kelsey? 76. Okay, that was Kelsey. And then Tammy had what?
75.
And 78. Now, you can put commas. You don't have to. The reason you don't have to put commas is because all of these are single digits. So you know that that 5 is not part of 58. It can only represent 5 as part of 75. All right, what about my 80s for Kelsey?
86, 89.
86 and 89. Now, be careful because this is actually the stem in the middle. We're going to treat it like a mirror. So I'm going to write these in order going this way. So it's representative of 86, 89. Okay, it's kind of backwards when we do a double one. Because if I look at the other side, I'm going to write them 83, 85, and 85. Okay, I want the smaller number closest to my stem, no matter which way you're going. So 86 is smaller than 89, 83 is smaller than 85. So it kind of flips it like a mirror. Okay, what about my 90s?
91, 93, 97.
So 91, 93, 97. And over here we have 93 and 99. And then what do we put on both of them for 100? 0. Okay? So looking at this, well, if you look at it, who had more grades in the 90s?
Kelsey.
Kelsey, because you look, her leaves, she has more leaves over here than she did. Who had the lowest score? Kelsey, because she had a 68. It's the only one in the 60s category.
You add them up to see us.
You don't have to. We're just looking at numbers. Because right now, this is representing these two lists that I can compare them side by side. Like we just said, Kelsey has the lowest score because she had the 68. They both had 100. She had more 80. She had more 90s than Tammy did. Tammy had more 80s than she did. You see what I'm saying? Looking at this, when you see two numbers in the same column, where's your mode?
Between those two numbers.
Remember mode? 85. I see two 5s over here. Ding, ding, that's my mode. Okay? Not 5 is your mode, but 85 would be your mode. All right, looking at this. How many science tests did Kelsey receive in 86 or above? So we're going to look right here. Here's 86. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 86 or above, this would be 86 and everything below. And we said who received the lowest score? Kelsey. All right, and compare the median and the range. So if we look at the median for Kelsey and Tammy, and then the range for Kelsey and Tammy, okay? Let's do range first. It's a little bit easier. Kelsey's lowest grade was 68. Her highest was 100. So what was her range? 32. What about Tammy? 75 is the lowest. 100 is the highest. 25. So Kelsey had a wider range of test scores than Tammy did. But let's look at the medians. And we know how to find median over here. Let's talk about using our stem and leaf plot. If I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, no, we have 4 numbers, right? We have 8. No, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we got to do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to fall between 89 and 91, which would be 90. Okay? And then Tammy, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to fall between 85 and 85, which is 85. So look at this. Kelsey had more 90s, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tammy had more 80s. When you initially looked at their test scores, who do you think would have had the higher median?
Kelsey.
I would have thought Kelsey, just because, look, she had the lowest score. But if we look at this, because we can look at the spread or the shape of this data, see how her grades continually improve? Look what happens to her. They kind of get better and then they get worse again. So Kelsey actually ended up with the higher median score than Tammy did. Okay? This is a stem and leaf plot. You need to know how to create one. You need to know how to look at it and answer questions about it. This is a shorthand representation of all of these numbers. Okay? One last thing I want to show you. Anytime you have a graph or a map, you have a key. So with your stem and leaf plot, we need to create a key. I'm going to pick any number. I'm going to pick 83 right here. So I'm going to write a stem of 8, a line, a leaf of 3 is equal to 83. this just shows how to read this, that 8 with a line and 3 equals 83. All right, any questions so far? You see how we make them? Not bad, right? All right, the next graph I want to talk to you about today is a histogram. And no, that is not Instagram. Histogram. Now, the biggest difference that you're going to think, oh, well, we're just doing a bar graph. Well, yes, you are, except for the fact a histogram, there are no spaces between the bars. On a histogram, you have no spaces between the bars. The reason is we're using intervals. Look at this. Instead of creating a bar graph that says how many people read 0 books, how many people read 1, how many people read 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, you're doing intervals. How many people read 0 to 2? Okay? So you have a range. To me, the best description of a histogram would be if I were going to chart grades. Because let's say I'm charting how many A's, B's, and C's I had in class. What grade range do you have for a C?
70 to 79.
Okay. 70 to 79. Well, what happens right after that 79? I have 80. Okay, there's nothing in between 79 and 80. Because even if it's a decimal, 79.4 is 79. 79.5 is 80. So there's nothing in between the two, so you keep those bars touching each other. So you would have your intervals of 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 100, and that would be, like I said, it would show continual counting, I guess you would say. So those intervals touch each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a histogram from this information. Then we're going to answer some questions about it. So you always want to start with your axis like any other graph. And you won't be making a whole lot of these. You're going to be answering questions about them more. But I do want to show you how we make one, okay? I'm going to go ahead and mark off some numbers over here. And we're going to count by 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm going to number those. Okay, so what do you think this axis of our graph would represent? We're looking at our chart, and this is students in her class. What would this side of our graph represent? The number of, not books, the frequency, which is the number of students. So we're going to say this is the number of students, okay? Now, which would be our frequency, okay? Across the bottom, we're going to put our intervals, which is the number of books. So we're going to start with 0 to 2, and then we have 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 11, and 12 to 14. You see how there's no gaps in between those numbers? So we're going to do the same thing with our bars. So how many students read 0 to 2 books? 6. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to draw my first bar for 6 books. Or for, 6 students. 6 students read 0 to 2 books. Now, because my next interval picks up right after that, how many students read 3 to 5? 10. So I'm going to continue here, go all the way up to 10, and come down. See how there's no space? On a bar graph, you would have spaces in between your bars. On a histogram, you do not, because you're talking about intervals. What about 6 to 8? So I'm going to come in between 6 and 8. Okay. What about 9 to 11? 3. So we'll come down here between 2 and 4. And you're making sure each one of your bars touches the one before. And then 12 to 14, 4. Okay. So again, almost exactly like a bar graph, right? Except this time, your interval, they are intervals, So your bars all touch each other. And this was, what did we say, number of books.
So that number of like 0 to 2 is just the amount of books that each kid read?
Yeah, 0 to 2 is how many books they read on vacation, yeah. And 6 students read 0 to 2. So 6 students, 0 to 2 books. All right, so let's look at some questions. How many students read 6 or more books? 6 or more starts right here. How many? 14. And let's look why. If we start right here, this is 6, starting right here. 6 or more, we got to add together 7, 3, and 4, which would give us 14. How many students read between 9 and 14? These two bars. 7. And then which interval would you say has the highest frequency?
3 to 5.
3 to 5. So guys, that's really it about histograms. Like I said, you won't be making that many of them. I want you to know how you would make one. It's just like a bar graph, except your bars touch. But being able to look at them and answer questions about them. Okay? Are we good? Any questions? All right, we're going to do some homework in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and stop this.